Measuring liquid ingredients requires special measuring tools for those larger amounts of cups and fractions of cups. You can see a variety of ingredients here that would be measured in those liquid measuring cups or in measuring spoons. It's important to remember that basically if it can be poured in a thin, steady stream, it should be measured in a liquid measuring cup, even if it's a thick liquid, and we'll talk about that more during the demonstration. To measure liquids correctly, we want to make sure that we use the proper measuring tools. You can see here that I have liquid measuring cups. These particular ones are made of glass. They are sometimes also made of plastic. You'll notice that they have a handle and a pour spout, making it easier to transfer those liquid ingredients to your mixing bowl or cooking pan. Also, you'll notice that there's some empty space between the top measurement and the very top of the cup, and that's so that it makes it easier to transfer without spilling. And most of the time you can buy these with both customary and metric measurements, one on each side. So we have the customary cups and ounces on this side, and we have milliliters, the metric measurement, on the other side. When measuring small amounts of liquids, just like with small amounts of dries, you'll want to use measuring spoons. And I always like the custard cup to measure over to catch any spills, because you should never measure over your mixing bowl. It's important to note that your liquids should not be measured in the dry measuring cups. Dry measuring cups are not made the same way as the liquid measuring cups are. There are a few liquids like clear juice, stock broth, and water that will measure the same in a dry as they would in a liquid, but for the most part that is not true. So as a good practice, make sure you measure anything that can be poured in a thin stream in a liquid measuring cup for accuracy. The first thing we're going to measure is a cup of water, and I've added a little blue food coloring to the water just to make it easier to see. So you always, when you're measuring liquids, want to make sure that your measuring cup is first on a solid level surface. So I have the measuring cup on the counter. We're going to add the liquid to what looks like that measurement, and this is a 2-cup liquid measuring cup. So that 1 cup is going to be halfway to the top. But then it's really key to make sure that you stoop down, get eye level with that measuring cup, and check that measurement. So when you come down to eye level with the measuring cup, you always leave it on that level surface, because if you pick it up, it can move. And we want to make sure that that line is at the that the liquid is at the line. And sometimes thin liquids like water will form a meniscus or a curve, and you want the bottom of that curve or the bottom of that meniscus to be equal with the line and the measurement that you need for your liquid for your recipe. How we work with our liquids after we're measuring when we're transferring them to our container can also vary depending on the liquid. So for example, when I pour the water out of the measuring cup, you can see that the water left the measuring cup easily. There's not a bunch of it sticking around on the sides of the measuring cup. That would not be true with something like honey or oil, or even something like a heavy whipping cream. These are all thick liquids that would cling to the side of the measuring cup, and you would need to make sure that you clean it out with a rubber scraper to make sure that all of the ingredient gets into the mixing bowl or to your cooking pan. So here's an example of a thicker liquid that often needs to be scraped from a measuring cup to make sure that you get it all in your recipe, especially with items that are baked. You have to be very precise because you don't have any chance to fix them until they come out, till it's too late. So I'm going to measure 1/2 cup of oil, same way. My measuring cup is on a level surface. I pour it in until it looks like the right amount, and then I move down to eye level to check. If it's not quite enough, I'll add a little more. This one happens to be just below the 1/2 cup line. So again, I move to eye level. Now I've got exactly the 1/2 cup that I need, and I'm going to transfer it to this other cup. And if I just pour it in, so I don't see it right away because it's the oil is so clear. But when I scrape the measuring cup, I scrape those sides, you can see that little puddle of oil that would have been missed. And that might only be about a teaspoon, but it can make a big difference. You'd be surprised at what a small amount can lead to, what a big difference a small amount of missing ingredient can lead to. So always make sure that you scrape with a rubber scraper any ingredients that would cling to the side of the measuring cup. Now let's look at measuring small amounts of liquid ingredients. So as we get ready to measure small amounts of liquid ingredients, again, we are using our measuring spoons. I'm going to measure 1 teaspoon of vanilla, a very common amount in a lot of recipes, and I'm going to measure over 1 custard cup. And if I don't have my mixing bowl ready to put that ingredient into, then I'm going to want to have it set aside, and so I'm going to have a second custard cup for that purpose. So when I add the vanilla to the measuring spoon, okay, so one of the things that's important is to make sure that it bubbles up at the edge of the spoon. Whatever liquid you're measuring, you want the surface tension to hold that liquid inside the measuring spoon. Otherwise, when I tilt my spoon, see if you can get a good look at this. When I tilt my spoon, even though it kind of looks full when I hold it level, you can still see some of the interior of the spoon, showing that it's not a full spoon of vanilla, full measurement of vanilla. So we're going to add a little more vanilla. And the reason I do the measuring, or the custard cup underneath, is because when I do get it correct, and that surface tension is holding it in, it's ready to spill. So I've got it right here. It's very full. The surface tension is holding my vanilla. If I tilt it, it'll spill out. And so I'm going to move that teaspoon of vanilla into my custard cup. Now the other reason that's nice to measure over the custard cups is because anything that's caught in that cup, and that's the only ingredient in there, it can be put back into the container and not wasted. Your typical set of measuring spoons comes with 4 spoons, a tablespoon, a teaspoon, a 1/2 teaspoon, and a 1/4 teaspoon. However, you will run across recipes that require an 1/8 of a teaspoon measure of a liquid ingredient. So to do that, we're going to take that 1/4 teaspoon measuring spoon, and you're going to have to estimate with this. So holding it over the custard cup to catch any drips, I'm going to fill this spoon about half full. So we're going to add just enough liquid to fill that measuring spoon about half full, and then you're ready to add it to your mixing bowl or set it aside until your recipe's ready for the addition. One more thing about measuring liquids is I would encourage you to check the size of your container, especially if you have smaller containers that you're measuring from. So for example, if my recipe called for 2 cups of heavy whipping cream, I can look at the label on this container and I can see that it says 1 pint. And if I know my equivalents, then I know that 1 pint is 2 cups. So I would not even need to measure this. I would simply just open it, pour the ingredient out. If I wanted to be really thorough, could even pull the top open completely and scrape out the inside to make sure nothing remains, since this is one of those thicker liquids. But I would save some ingredient by simply not transferring it to a measuring cup. So always make sure that you know the size of the container that you're measuring from, so that you don't waste time or ingredients transferring it to a measuring cup, when if you had just checked the label, you would know you had the exact amount that you needed.